Everyone, Russ of Aquarimax here. I think I made a technical mistake about how I did that to make the stream go live. It was supposed to, I just messed up the timing somehow. I'm not sure exactly what I did, but that's okay. Hopefully you can all hear me clearly. And I see SAMA 2020, when you'll have morning geckos available again. I do have a waiting list, so I think it's not very long. I think there are only 3 people on it, and at least 2 geckos go out at a time. 2 to 3 geckos go out at a time. So you're welcome to message me on Instagram or on the Aquarimax contact page, and I could put you on the list if you would like to be on the list. So yeah, thank you for asking. The Science Lair. Hello, Autumn, Ayala, and Schonmeister. Good evening. Toilet Pete. Yolk? I'm not sure what that means, but that's okay. Miller Madison, hello. The Bug Hub, greetings. Science Lair, what do you think the best arthropod other than isopods is for a planted terrarium? Do springtails count? Because I think springtails are pretty good for that. But if you mean something like a display creature in a planted vivarium, then you have to think about that. Going through arthropods in my head. That's a tough one, to be honest. But I'll think about it. Lucas, Marlin, the Tarantula Collective. Hello, Richard, welcome. Ashley N, hello. Hey, there's Chris the Mad Aquarist. Excellent. So, I'm going to pull up Patreon. We have a lot of questions today, which I'm really excited about. It's nice when, oh, hold on. Nice when the questions just pour in, and we got quite a few. All right, Theropod Hunter and Lawson's Animals. Ooh, thinking about getting an arboreal salamander. I've kept salamanders, I've never kept any arboreal ones, but that sounds like an intriguing idea. All right. So pulling up the topics here for patrons. So Ashley N has a question about diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth says she unknowingly gave her giant canyons an egg carton that had diatomaceous earth on it, and I'm struggling with deaths. Can you share the dangers of this natural product so others don't have to experience what I am right now? So that is an awful thing, and I'm sorry to hear about that. Diatomaceous earth is a natural product, and so sometimes it can be tempting to think it's not, not dangerous necessarily for isopods and whatnot, but it's dangerous for just about any arthropod as far as I'm aware, because basically what diatomaceous earth is the silicaceous shells of certain types of algae, diatoms, that produce, well, some people say the effect is like it would be for us if we were walking on broken glass with bare feet. And you can imagine how pleasant that is and how dangerous that would be to continue walking on a bunch of broken glass. Other people say that it's more like the diatomaceous earth strips the chitinous exoskeletons of arthropods of the natural oils and waxes that kind of protect them from desiccation. And so either way, it's dangerous for them, it kills them. And it's used widely for pest control in a fairly safe way. I've used it to control escaped crickets, for example. Put it down on the floor, and crickets will crawl through it, and they get a little bit on them, and then they will desiccate over the next day or two. And you can use it to control mites. You can put, for example, a tray of diatomaceous earth and then put fruit fly cultures on little dishes inside that or whatever, and then they can't crawl between the 2 dishes to infect other cultures because they can't make it past the diatomaceous earth. So it is a natural product, but it has that effect on arthropods. So I would really would just say be careful that anything that touches that doesn't touch your arthropods. That's why I would recommend the little saucers on the tray. If you have a tray full of diatomaceous earth, a thin layer, then you put the saucers on it and then put the deli cups of fruit flies on there. Then you're not getting it on that on the deli cup, because if you did, and then you're, say, shaking fruit flies into your mantis enclosure, you're not shaking the remnants of the diatomaceous earth off the bottom of the enclosure into your mantis enclosure, which would be potentially disastrous. So hopefully that helps a little bit, talking about understanding the dangers of diatomaceous earth. Any arthropod that comes, or most arthropods that come in contact with it, will not be positively affected, despite its natural origins. And there's Crystal's Pets and Plants, Newt's Commander. Oh, the science layer, camel crickets. Someone you should talk to about camel crickets is Invertebrate Dude. I have never kept camel crickets, but he has. And actually, if you look back a couple of months on our live streams, I had Invertebrate Dude as a guest on the live stream recently, and we talked about camel crickets and their care. So I'd recommend checking out that live stream again, and maybe contacting Invertebrate Dude on Instagram or something like that, and finding out a little bit more about that. There's Eileen O'Donnell and Chimkin Nugget. How are the dart frogs doing? Doing well. I heard the male calling, was that this morning? Probably, or this evening, or yesterday evening. Doing well. Matt M., updates on your aquariums. I have a ton of multis. My multis have been breeding really well. I've had a lot of fry lately. Let's see. My aquaponics experiment with my endlers, I have 1 billion endlers in there, not literally, but many, many endlers, and a lot of plant mass. I did put a new species of moss in there recently, and that's doing well. And the pothos that is rooted in my endler aquarium is gigantic. I've been dosing that tank with fertilizer, all-in-one fertilizer, twice a week, and the pothos plant is gigantic. Goldfish tank, I have water lettuce on the top of it, and I also have several, 2 different species of pothos rooted in it, and it's doing pretty well too. A little bit more algae than I'd like, but the goldfish seem really healthy and they're doing well in there. So those are my fish aquariums anyway. I've got other aquariums with shrimp and stuff in them too. But there's a little update from Matt. Supreme Gecko, Wally's here, awesome. And so Lucas, a question about the earwigs. I've heard various things about earwigs and enclosures. I've heard that they can be used to control mites. I have not been inclined to use earwigs, partly because they're pretty good with smooth surfaces, much better than isopods are anyway, and they release that repugnatorial fluid when you mess with them, and I feel like that might be a problem with other creatures that you're keeping. Say you have a lizard or a toad or something in there, they can release that fluid, which really smells bad and would probably be distasteful for a lot of creatures if they were to try to eat the earwigs. Earwigs also, despite some sources, I have been pinched by a large earwig. I've never been pinched by a particularly small earwig, but I've been pinched by a large earwig and I felt it. And I would be hesitant to put earwigs with creatures that could be pinched. And Theropod Hunter, they're very true about the fruit flies. Shu Kurenai, hello. Oh, Theropod, you're going to get the green laser cubaras. That's awesome. Science Layer, have you ever kept any aquatic invertebrates? Lots of them. And I have several right now. From various species of snails. I have assassin snails right now and a couple other species of snails that are aquatic. I have we have a couple species of shrimp right now. We have Halocaridina rubra, the Hawaiian red shrimp. We've got Neocaridina davidi, the red cherry shrimp, different color varieties of that. I've got a big colony of Daphnia and Scuds that I've had for years and years and years. Daphnia being a cladoceran crustacean, and amphipods, well, they're amphipods, another kind of crustacean. So that's just some of them. I've kept quite a few more as well. In fact, my first aquatic invertebrates that I kept were, I think, were isopods. Were aquatic isopods, and we're talking, 35 years ago or something like that. Maybe not exactly that, but over 30 years ago anyway. And I've kept bristleworms, I've kept peppermint shrimp, I've kept various types of soft corals. So lots of aquatic invertebrates. I could probably keep going. Ian, let's see, how long do P. Hoffman's egg take to mature? Good question. To get to full size, they take a long time. Probably over a year, in my experience. But to get to reproductive age, probably less than that. I would say 6 to 8 months, depending on, conditions, maybe, something like that. And Ansari Mustafa, hello. Wanted to ask about the Endler aquarium. Okay, well, I was just talking about it, how the Endlers are doing really well. The plant's growing crazy. That tank is almost entirely plant mass, with Endlers darting in and through the roots of the plant and some other plants that are in there. I have some guppy grass in there. I have some mosses and stuff. And there you go. And Shalo, I'm not sure how to say your name exactly, but I do have springtails available. I can ship Fulsomia candida to almost every state, not Hawaii. And I can ship Sinella curviceta to most states, and I'm working on getting permits for the rest of the states. Oh, Theropods Hunter. I don't think I know Cubar Shrub's Dream. So, Lawson's Animals. I have an online store. Yep, it's isopodsrus.com, or you can go to aquarimax.com and get there as well. And it's largely centered on isopods, but I do have springtails, I have isopod supplies, I have other invertebrates, I sometimes sell fish and geckos and things like that as well. I will be offering some garter snakes fairly soon. I have a very pregnant female right now. Okay, SIMA 2020, got it. Okay, if you're already on the list, that's great. I have 3 hatchlings that are about to go out to the first person on the list. I need to contact her and let her know. And then I'm just waiting for some more hatchlings. So that's about where we are on that. The 3 that are going out have put a little growth on them and look good. So I'm going to send those out, and then I'll be ready for going to the next person on the list. And the Science Lair, do scuds chew on plants very much? I think that depends on a lot of factors. It depends on how much food they get otherwise, it depends on the type of plant, and it depends on what else is in the tank, because scuds that are kept in check by fish don't really chew on the plants that much, because they're hiding, trying to stay away from the fish. But you take the fish out and they'll come out and do their thing. And that's also depending on food, like I said. But for example, I had a tank, a 5-gallon tank years ago, and it was planted, had Java fern and trying to remember what else, but I remember there was Java fern in it and several other plants. At any rate, I had a betta in there, and it was an office aquarium. So I took my betta home for the Christmas holidays, left my aquarium there, and it was fine when I left. When I came back, it had been a couple of weeks, and no fish in there. And the scuds had really attacked the plants because they weren't getting, surplus food from the fish, and they weren't getting eaten by the fish, and so they were nibbling on the plants. Took a hit, basically. So it depends on all of those factors. Also, species probably plays a part there too. So Grace Swanson, what's your favorite type of isopod? Hard to say. I have so many favorites. One of my favorite of the large Porcellia would be Porcellia expansus. One of my favorite of the Armadillidium would be Armadillidium gestroi. But I have so many favorites. So Ansari Mustafa, can we get another update and feeding video on the Endler aquarium? Maybe. I feel like you'd be mostly looking at plant roots, to be honest. There's a big pyramid of pothos roots in there. right now I've been keeping the light off because two reasons. One, because I'm trying to kill off duckweed, and I think I'm just about there because I don't want duckweed in there. And the other is that there's enough residual light from the fluorescent light on my garter snake enclosure that the plants up against that side do just fine without the light, and so I've got moss and guppy grass and whatnot growing on that side. But maybe it's just so full of plants right now. I don't know if I could get an aesthetically pleasing video, but we'll see. Well, thank you, Wally. I appreciate that. Oh, there's zero. Cool. Excellent. Okay, Science Layer. Any freshwater aquatic invertebrates that would eat phytoplankton green water that can do okay in less than perfect water parameters. Depends on the water parameters, but Daphnia love phytoplankton, green water, they love it. And if you get one of the mesh breeder boxes, people do this, it's a thing. If you have green water and you want to take care of it, you get a mesh breeder box and put it in your tank. Put the Daphnia inside it so fish or other larger invertebrates can't eat the Daphnia. And as the water flows through that little breeder box, the Daphnia will clean it up. I mean, even just the Daphnia that fit in that little breeder box can clean up the green water from the tank. So it's pretty cool. I mean, there are other factors that can be involved there. If you have Hydra, that's not going to work very well because the Hydra will eat the Daphnia pretty fast. You know, things like that. If there are contaminants in the water, like Daphnia are very sensitive to heavy metals, so if you have heavy metals in the water, even fairly small quantities that aren't going to harm the fish, it could kill the Daphnia off. So there are things like that to worry about. So when you say less than perfect water parameters, kind of depends on what you mean. A little green water usually means that the water parameters are suitable for Daphnia. I'm not going to say that's 100% true, but in general it is. So hopefully that helps. Ooh, Summit 2020, that sounds like a really nice setup for some morning geckos. So my audio is squeaky. Let me see what I can do. Wally, thank you for letting me know. I'm going to just check my connections here on my audio. And is it you talking? Is it him? Because he is talking periodically, and I don't know if that's affecting things. So that might be what's going on. Let's see. Any crystalwort? I have had crystalwort. I love the liverworts, that whole group of plants, and I have grown crystalwort before. I don't have any now, but I used to grow it. It's fun stuff. Okay, Carlos. Monkey pods, trumpet seed pods, and other biodegradable decor pods for terrariums. I don't actually sell them. I have a couple that I have for my own use, but I don't really have, I don't have them in, commercial quantities available, but maybe I should look into that. It's not a bad idea, because I think isopods, as well as things like dart frogs and other, bioactive setups could benefit from that. So maybe I should look into that. That's a good idea. Holly C, greetings. So Carlos Moore, you're waiting on an email address to send the morning geckos to, or send the morning gecko waiting list request to. If that's what you're saying, I think it is. You can do info@aquarimax.com. That's the email address you can use. JP's Exotic Pets. Yep. So I'm not, sorry about the squeaky audio. Let me try one more thing, okay? Let me know if that improves the audio. I'm just trying various things. If this improves the audio, let me know. Okay. So coming back. Can you recommend a cleanup crew for Cytala horrida? That's the horrid king assassin bug. Lost a few nymphs attempting to use powder blue and powder oranges. The isopods appear to kill fresh molted nymphs. I know someone who's used giant canyons with them. the one who did the video with me, Bug Eaters, Ray of Bug Eaters, did the collaboration video with me on the Horrid King Assassins, and he kept giant canyons with his, and he didn't appear to have any problems, but I don't have any personal experience with that. Kirby, Murby, waiting on some isopods to arrive today. 100 A. depressum and 40 A. parache. Awesome. That's very cool. How large of a container do morning geckos need? Science lair. My rule of thumb is that I'll house up to 6 adults in a 12 by 12 by 18, 18 tall and a 12 by 12 footprint Exoterra. Up to 6 adults, as long as there are plenty of spaces for them to hide and things like that, because morning geckos use not only the floor, they use the sides, they use the ceiling, and they use whatever other decor you have in there to climb on, so they're really making use of that space. So as long as they have plenty of hide, so they're not going to fight as much, yeah, I would say up to 6 adults in something like that. You can definitely go bigger, they'll use it. What is my favorite species of beetle? Again, so many beetles, so little time. I'm really partial to blue death feigning beetles and all of the desert tenebrionids, really. If I could get into some of the larger beetles that people keep in other countries that are not legal here, I'd probably have some favorites there, but I can't at this point. So yeah, until maybe someday I'll be able to get a permit to be able to keep some of those, but until I do, blue death feigning beetle is definitely up there, one of my favorites. No insecurities. Hello. Tennyson, greetings. Okay. See, I'm too trusting about jokes about sound. That's my thing, but no worries, Wally. Any tips on isopods nibbling a little too much on the plants in my bioactive terrarium? Should I just feed them more? If they're nibbling on them, it's probably either they're not getting enough food or there's a problem with the plants. If the plants are starting to get weak, then they might go after plants that are already starting to suffer. So it couldn't hurt to just feed the isopods a little bit more. That's not a bad idea, and see if that helps. And Frank de Tank, very good point. You do need to block out the little holes up at the top for cords for isopods. You need to put some, you can use various things. You can use great stuff foam, you could use silicone, you can use moist, or actually wet paper towel. There's a couple of things, so there you go. And that will help. Because yeah, the babies can definitely get through those holes. And even, a little bit older. Okay, and no insecurities. 101 basic care videos helped me tremendously. Thanks, Russ. Oh, you're welcome. Excellent. Okay, glad to hear the sound is doing better. I realized I still had the charger in, and that sometimes can get some residual buzziness, and so I took it out because it was a little low before, but I think we're okay now. Okay, so Lex. I've been raising tadpoles for a few weeks now. When should I start thinking about releasing them into my pond? Well, assuming it's a species that occurs naturally in your area and that it's legal to do so, then I would say it totally depends on your situation. I mean, assuming the pond doesn't have any fish that would eat the toadlets or froglets and so on and all those other things, the concerns that I mentioned, I would say when they've metamorphosed is not a bad time to do it. Okay, well, Carlos, that is a good suggestion. I might look into that. Well, the science layer. Could a single individual morning gecko do well in an 11 by 11 by 10 round container? Or 11 by 11 by 9? Okay. Potentially. Kind of depends on the lid. One thing that I don't like to do with morning geckos is use containers that only open on the top. And part of the reason is that the geckos tend to lay eggs right up against that top, or worse, straddling that top and something else. So they lay the eggs right on the glass and the top. And then, of course, when you open the lid, you break the egg. So that could be a potential issue. The other thing is that individual mourning gecko is most likely going to lay eggs, and you'll end up with other geckos. When they're alone, there are some studies that indicate they don't lay as often, but they can still do it. And there are other studies that say it doesn't matter. So that may depend on different clones and whatnot. So I would say you could do it temporarily, if just keep in mind the egg caveat and the escaping caveat, because the lid is going to have to be very secure. But you probably will not end up with just one. So Marlin, yeah, I'm kind of worried about the slippery slope of various animals becoming illegal, even if they actually occur in a particular area. I totally understand some protections against animals that could become invasive, but if an animal is already established in an area, I don't think there's much rationale for making it illegal in that same area as a pet. But okay, well, Lex, that sounds like, yeah, as soon as they turn into froglets or toadlets, that'd be a good time then. Do millipedes go well with isopods, Tennyson? Well, a terrarium with various detritivores sounds cool. And I will tell you, some people do it successfully. Some people keep millipedes with isopods successfully. Some people have had horror stories. So it can be done. And my personal preference has been to keep them separate, just because this is how I like to explain it, okay? Isopods rarely attack healthy living invertebrates, right? However, if you have a millipede that molts and has a slight mismolt, not one that would kill it on its own, just a very slight mismolt that's going to just cause a little bit of cosmetic damage, and left to its own devices, it would kind of seal up and over subsequent molts be able to heal from that and fix the cosmetic damage, okay? That's not an uncommon thing with millipedes, to have little minor mismolts that can be problems like that. But a mismolt that small could cause isopods, especially if there are a lot in the enclosure, could cause them, they could smell the problem, a little bit of an injury or something, and attack that millipede and eat it. Now, does that mean a millipede that's going to heal? I mean, a millipede that molts completely successfully is going to be attacked? Not necessarily. Does that mean you can't keep isopods and millipedes together successfully sometimes? Not necessarily. Does it mean it could sometimes cause problems when there are issues like that, and then you might lose millipedes that you wouldn't otherwise lose? Probably. So that's my rationale. Not to say it can't be done. Some people do it extremely successfully, but that's kind of what my thoughts on it. And theropod hunter. Oh, your Pachnota. Those are beetles, like very cool beetles. They emerged as adults. Congratulations on that. That is cool. I love that whole group of beetles. Very cool. Can't really get them here, but they're cool. And yeah, isopods love pods, which is funny, but they do. And cholla wood, that's true. And Acadia territory, using a coconut hut to lay eggs in. That is a great idea. Do you put the coconut hut on the ground, or do you put it high up? What do you do? I've tried various things to get them to lay. I haven't tried coconut huts. Let's see. No insecurities, a Brachypelma harmori that only eats harmori, is that how it's at? It only eats pre-killed dubias and is an adult. It's afraid of the dubias. And it was the sling, it ate live dubias, no problems. Ideas? Well, if Richard, the Tarantula Collective, if you're around still, if you have any ideas, I'd be happy to hear them. I don't really have any ideas because I haven't worked with tarantulas much at all. I babysat one for a few weeks, that's about it. And thank you. He's kind of an adorable little budgie, isn't he? And he loves to talk. You do, don't you? You love to listen to me talk too. Would isopods do well with Verones ornata? Ah, that's the Opilione, like daddy longlegs, but not like the normal species that we see. It's a very interesting communal arachnid. I've heard of people keeping them together. I have not kept Verones ornata, so I'm not sure. Verones ornata, I said the name wrong, but you know what I mean. And I know what you're talking about. It is the Opilione species. I think I've heard people doing it, but I don't have any experience with them, so I'm not sure. Oh, Carlos Moore has a suggestion about the Brachypelma. Speckled Jim, thinking of putting a small mantis in with isopods to Scarfini's fungus nets. Might work. Well, I'm not going to say it's absolutely won't. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think an isopod, I mean, a mantis would get a ton of nutrition from fungus gnats. But when it's really small, once again, if it's there for any length of time, it's going to need to molt. And when molting time comes around, it could be vulnerable potentially to isopods. Okay, Arcadia territory. Love this idea. I'm going to get some more coconut huts, and I'm going to put some in with my morning geckos because that sounds awesome. I'm going to do it for sure. Remind me at the end of the live stream. I'm going to do what I need to go order some. Order some coconut huts. Oh, shrubs dream are arboreal isopods. Interesting. That sounds cool. And, ooh, the green plant watering tubes. Yeah, I tried the clear ones and lined them with paper Wally and had mixed success. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I didn't try the green ones. I should have done that. But, yeah, I'm going to try I may try the green plant watering tubes as well. And Crystal, congrats on the praying mantis egg cases. Awesome. And Tennyson, how did the herping trip go? Well, saw some cool things. And it was short, so I didn't get to see as much as I would have liked to see, but it was pretty cool. And I'm going to have a video coming out on it pretty soon. And the science lair. Oh yeah. I've been wanting to try the butterworts, the Pinguicula species, to control fungus gnats. I think that's pretty cool. You know, right now I'm trying rove beetles. I got some rove beetles from Kyle Candillion at Roach Crossing that are supposed to eat fungus gnats, and he's been keeping them for a long time, and they eat his fungus gnats. They don't appear to harm his isopods or springtails at all, and he's kept them long enough that he would know by now. And so I got a colony of them, a starter colony of them a few weeks ago. So it's still too early to see what's going on, but I'm excited about it. Oh, I'll have to look for the dart frog tubes too. Porcelia expansus, I haven't kept Porcelia bolivari yet, but I love Porcelia expansus, and I think they might be the king of isopods, in my opinion. Do you guys think locusts will ever be a thing in the US? I don't know. I mean, we have native species of things similar to what the locusts that they keep in Europe and use as feeders, but they're pretty careful about that kind of thing and moving them from state to state, so I don't know. So sad Florence. Oh, you've got Drosera on the fungus net detail too. I love Drosera. I had Drosera capensis for a while, and that was really fun. That was a number of years ago. But I've been thinking about doing that again. I really like Drosera, and I've always wanted to try Pinguicula too. Do the Pinguicula need demineralized water, like distilled water or RO water, just like many of the other carnivorous plants do? That would be interesting to know. So speckled Jim, yes. The fungus gnat trap that I reviewed a while ago, I love it. It's great. And the only reason why I'm not using it right now is because Kyle said not to use it for a few weeks, like at least a couple weeks, when I'm getting my colony of robe beetles established. But it works really well. And it also catches moths and things like that too. So it's very effective. And if you're trying to find it, go to my website, not my website, go to my video about it. Just find the review of it. It's called Katchy, K-A-T-C-H-Y, and there's a link in the description, and it is an affiliate link, so I get a cut if you use it. So, all right. So I have some other comments from Patreon I want to make sure I cover before we get too far. So from Cassie, she said, I've noticed some stuck molts on the upper half of a few species of pods I have. It's boggling because they're from the same seller, and other ones I've acquired from other sellers don't seem to be having a problem. I keep it damp as usual. Thoughts? Thanks. Well, one thing I would think is, are they your most recent isopods? Because if they came in more recently, it might be less about the seller and more about conditions that they underwent, possible stresses from shipping, things like that could have something to do with it, possibly. And the other thing is, do they have a good gradient? Like you're saying, keep it damp as usual, but if they have a moisture gradient from one side of the enclosure to the other, that will help them regulate their molt better. But it sounds like you're keeping all of your isopods under similar conditions. But those are the two things I would think about. Are they the most recent isopods you got? So could this be a kind of residual shipping stress? And two, is it an issue that a stronger moisture gradient could help with? Okay. All right, so great question, Cassie. And Ashley N has some more questions. She said, why can't some isopods be sent to certain states? I think I know, but worth asking. Well, each state is responsible for deciding what comes in. So even though you apply for a permit, for example, through the APHIS, your permit is either denied or accepted state by state. You have to apply to send isopods to specific states individually. And so when you apply, they look at it, and if they don't have a record of a particular species being established there, then they typically have more restrictions on it. So for example, there are certain species I can't ship to Louisiana, Oregon. Those are two that stand out to me. Louisiana and Oregon are a little bit more restrictive about what I can send isopod-wise, because they don't have records of those particular species. Like Porcellio laevis, I don't think you can send Porcellio laevis to Oregon. I don't think you can send Porcellio scaber, I want to say, to Louisiana. And I could be wrong about which species is what. I have it all written down, but I don't necessarily remember it off the top of my head. But anyway, that is the reason. And the interesting thing is this. By crowdsourcing information about this, crowdsourcing documentation, we can sometimes reverse things. For example, Sinella curvicetta is a common springtail that I culture, and it's used very widely in the hobby as one of the best cleaner springtails out there. It's my favorite springtail to use with isopods. Philosomia candida is pretty good too, but Sinella curvicetta is even better, which is why I've been trying to get permits for that. And I have permits for most states and still working on the other ones. At any rate, the first time I tried to apply for permits, they were denied. And the reason was there was not any evidence that they were established in the US. So I went and visited websites that could document the presence. They included things like where they were collected. They had geocoordinates in some cases. They had like this was collected in this county and this month and so on, and with photos, good quality photos. And by using these documentations of the species occurring in various parts of the US, I was able to get them approved because it was clear that they were established in the US. So, for example, if you live in one of the states where you can't have Porcelia laevis, but you are able to demonstrate clearly that Porcelia laevis is established in the wild there, then we might be able to reverse that. So, hopefully that helps, Ashley. Another question. How do you get a colubrid species snakes to release from a bite? I was told hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is a common one. Another one is Listerine. They both, you just touch their nose with a little bit of either one of those. That's supposed to help make them let go. So, is bigger better for corn snakes? I moved my guy to a 40-gallon from a 29-gallon. He has been displaying signs of stress. He's always searching his tank. That is a great question, and I think in general, if you have enough hides where they feel secure, I think bigger is better. If it might take a while for them to get used to it, though. But as long as you have hides where they can feel secure and tight, because they do like to be able to sort of, jam themselves into a small hide and fill it up. As long as they can do that, I think it works. That's my particular opinion on this this topic. So Eileen O'Donnell has a question, says, I have a relatively larger isopod enclosure not being used right now. I'm wanting to get a new species to put into it. Do you have any suggestions for one that's good in a larger setup? P.S. I already have dairy cows. So I'm going to offer a couple of options here. I'm going to say, if you already have dairy cows and you want a different morph, you could go with milkback, Porcelia laevis milkback, because they're different enough. I think they're different enough to warrant keeping both. I like them both, and I feel like they're pretty different. Another option would be Porcelia ornatus. A large container is good for Porcelia ornatus because they're a larger isopod. They tend to breed pretty well, and there are lots of morphs, and some of them are really active. Like so far, Porcelia ornatus yellow dot is the only one I have in really large numbers, so they're very active and visible. So that's a great one. Porcelia laevis, Porcelia ornatus high yellow I have too, and it's still a fairly young colony, so I still have a fairly small enclosure, but I'm going to be moving it because it's starting to fill up that enclosure. And then the Porcelia ornatus nord are also breeding quite a bit, so I'm going to need to move those soon. So I would say that's a species to try. And then any of the bigger isopods, although I would say Porcelia hoffmannseggi sometimes does better in smaller colonies, just in multiples and smaller groups of adults. But Porcelia expansus would be a great one. A little expensive. Porcelia ornatus yellow dot's definitely going to be a lot cheaper if you want to go cheaper, but it's hard to beat Porcelia expansus. I mean, they're one of my favorites. So hopefully that helps. And I think those are all the questions from patrons. Let me double check. But I think so. Looks like it. So now we'll go back to the chat for a minute. What do we got? I wish there were more springtail species available in the hobby. That would be nice. But you have to get a permit to own Goliath beetles in Utah. Yes. There's a Goliath beetle at the Insectarium in Lehi. They have one. It's super cool, but they have a permit because, they're a bug zoo. So, yep, Holly C, Louisiana, I'm pretty sure they have Porcelia laevis is not allowed there. That's true. And I am reading the questions off the chat. But I'm also, I just finished reading questions off of Patreon. So that's what I was doing when I was looking somewhere else. So science layer, the species are usually cultivation usually tropical. Oh, so like the pinguicula. The globular springtails are pretty cool. I like those. Oh, that's a good suggestion too, Supreme Gecko. Porcelia skipper Spanish orange. It's hard to beat those for color. That's true. and Chimkin Nugget. I'm afraid I don't know much about Suriname roach care because I can't keep roaches at all. But glow-in-the-dark springtails, I have read about them. I think that would be really cool, some bioluminescent springtails. I love bioluminescence. And Cassie. Okay, maybe that's what you need. Just get that moisture gradient going, and that may help. Okay, I'm not sure. Adhamelamaghalawi? That's quite a cool name you got there. So you may go to a reptile expo in a month or two, and if I move by then, I can get an animal. Any tips on convincing my family to get a vinegaroon or tailless web scorpion? Tips on convincing them. So they're not all excited about it. Is that true? Well, one thing that I always say is information helps make people more comfortable about something. So fear is often generated by what people don't know. So if they feel like they don't know much about them, then they're more likely to be afraid. If they know that the worst thing a vinegaroon can do is spray a little bit of vinegar-scented acid, then that might assuage their discomfort a little bit. If they know that tailless whip scorpions don't have a sting, don't have venom, and vinegaroons don't have venom either, that may be a start. You might want to show them a video if they're the kind of person that will sit and watch a YouTube video with you, even about something that might make them a little uncomfortable. Show a video where they talk about them and maybe show someone handling one. And it might scare them, might gross them out, but on the other hand, they might say, wow, people can hold them. Well, aren't they getting bitten? And you can start a conversation. You know, they don't actually bite people in general, you know, that kind of thing. Okay, so Gray, what is the sort of basic process to go through in order to sell isopods? I know there's some permits involved. Well, it's not a basic process at all, but basically, if you're going to sell them, assuming you already have them, because to get them from out of state, you need to get a permit to receive them. But let's say you have a permit you already have them and you want to sell them out of state. So you need to apply for a permit, first of all, for each state. I recommend applying for the first permit for the first state, like Alabama's the first one on the list. Apply for that one, make sure you do it right. You have to list how you're keeping them in general, where they're going, and provide your address and various things, how they're going to be treated, how they're going to be shipped. You apply for that with the list of isopods you want to send, and then they'll send a reply back with conditions, and you need to accept the conditions and then send it back, and then they'll send you the permit. And that's the very basic Cliff Note version of how that works. So I hope that helps. It's a lot more involved than that, but those are the very basics. So it's just me, got our vinegaroon, awesome. Feeder, she doesn't eat most of the cricket. Is this normal? That's not usually normal, but how often are you feeding it? They will go on hunger strikes eventually, often, because in the wild they seem to kind of eat seasonally. So if it's not that hungry, that might be the case. And Speckled Jim, yeah, he'll just hang out for hours and hours here on my shoulder. He's friendly that way. And Ashley, and yes, I love this idea of making a PowerPoint presentation to convince people why you should be allowed to keep something. I think a lot of times the idea of doing research and presenting it can help, because they realize you're invested. They realize you have some knowledge about what you're doing. You're not just jumping into something. That can be impressive. So that's not a bad idea. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that. All right, well, excellent. I'm glad that helped with the vinegaroon. I think vinegaroons are pretty cool, and they don't, if you've given them that information, that's good. That's a great start. So, theropod hunter. I haven't, well, actually, I've never kept a siren as a pet. When I was a kid, I kept a Sicilian as a pet for a short time. They called it a rubber eel, I think, at the pet store. I was a kid, bought it. And of course, the lid wasn't sufficiently restricting, and it climbed out and desiccated, which was terrible. So I was sad about that, but that's the only time I ever kept one. It was a very short-lived project, unfortunately. So I don't have a lot of information on that. Ah, yes. So definitely, yeah, those videos could help a lot. And Clint's video specifically is it's a funny video, and they'll probably that'll probably help get them into it a little bit more. Wow, we've only got about 9 minutes left. Thank you for joining in, Science Slayer. If you got to go, I understand, but I appreciated your presence. Had some great questions, got things going. And yep, Speckled Jim, yep, totally agreed. Super idea. I think I've actually suggested that to people before, that they do some kind of formal, semi-formal presentation to try to get their family more receptive. I do think that there are certain battles that you shouldn't fight when it comes to that. Like, my wife just asked me, never keep tarantulas in the house. So I'm not going to. I'm not going to try to fight that, because I think it's reasonable for her to be able to have some, lines that I can't cross with things like that. So no roaches, no tarantulas, and nothing with medically significant venom. That's basically the rule right there, and it makes sense. That means just about everything else is on the table as a possibility. I think it's fair. And so when you get to a point where someone says this is absolutely the line, I think it's important to respect that. It is also good to note that they may eventually change their mind, and if they do, then that's cool. But the fact that you are able to respect, certain lines that you won't cross for their benefit, I think they're more likely to be accommodating. Like, my mom was not happy about snakes in my house when I was a kid, because some of them got loose because I didn't have proper enclosures. And so I didn't really have snakes growing up, except for a few abortive attempts to have snakes, and I got in trouble for it, and she wouldn't let me keep snakes anymore. So I didn't really have snakes until I was an adult and had been married for quite a while by the time we really got into snakes. But I love having snakes. That wasn't something on the list, so I can go ahead and do that, and my wife is okay with that. She's may not be entirely happy with the fact that there are frozen rodents in the freezer, but she's willing to deal with it because I won't keep roaches and I won't keep tarantulas because she doesn't want me to. See what I mean? Kind of balance it out like that. So Tennyson, in an open area where they could fly around but not escape. It depends on the beetle, and it depends on the setup. Basically, if you had an enclosure, an escape-proof enclosure, in a room that was also escape-proof, according to the rules that APHIS puts out, you could probably make it work. You could probably make it work legally. Basically, the way it was described to me is that in addition to the enclosure, you should keep them in a room that assumes they could otherwise escape. So you make that room so that they cannot escape from that room, and there are various ways you need to do that. But if you could do something like that, like you have double doors and you have the door sweep, so they can't get through under the door, and you have the room is otherwise sealed, you have to cover over your vents with a screen and things like that. There are several steps, but if you could do something like that and then put them in a large enclosure where they could fly around, then you could probably make it work. Well, gray, a leopard gecko that refuses to eat anything. That's a really weird one. Is it possible there are any husbandry issues with temperature or anything like that? But I guess it's with the vet. You've been to the vet 3 or 4 times and it's not eating anything. That is weird. Because the first thing I think of is husbandry. It's kind of hard to have leopard geckos that won't eat unless there is a husbandry issue, but I can't say that I know that there is in this case because I don't understand the situation. Oh, there's Supreme Gecko. He's saying the same thing, talking about the temperatures. Okay. Huh, Dagobah Cave, interesting. Wonder what those are. Oh, you had breeding tarantula populations in your basement. I can understand that causing some discomfort. Ah, speckled Jim, good point. So laying season can change things a little bit. Oh, yeah, he's been actually really a lot less active during this time. Maybe that's why he hasn't gone to the bathroom more often. Repticon May 29th? Oh, I am not, I'm not going to be. I don't know if you're talking to me or not, but. Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you, Richard, for the tarantula garage fund so Russ can keep some spiders. Oh, that's awesome. You know, I am thinking that I'm really hoping someday that I'll have a facility that's not connected to my house, and then I can keep whatever I want. I'm hoping for that. Not there yet, but I really am hoping to get there. I actually want to have most of my isopods there, a lot of creatures there in an offsite facility. But it's a pipe dream at this point, but I'm hoping it won't always be. Oh yeah, I've seen the cockroaches in the small containers at Petco. Yeah, they usually have dubias and hissers, and I feel sorry for them because a lot of times the containers just sit there, and you look at the older containers and they're desiccating or dead, which is sad. Oh, JP's Exotic Pets, another super chat. Excellent. Thank you so much. So that is really great. 2 excellent super chats. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, JP Exotic Pets. Really appreciated. So I'm $25 closer to that facility where I can keep my critters. And yeah, I'll probably keep some roaches there too when I have an offsite facility someday, if I ever get there. That would be really cool. I really appreciate that. Super chats help keep things going. So, I am just about out of time. I've got to go film some other videos, but I've really appreciated everybody's presence, the super chats, the excellent questions from those in the chat and from patrons. It has been great. And domino roaches, that's true, they don't really look roach-like, but I think she would know. Wow. 75% out of the big box store because they didn't want open containers to feed them. Yeah, the term exotic pet is kind of a loaded term because it's so inclusive and so vague. Yeah, it's not the best term probably because of that. I mean, when I think exotic pet, I kind of, well, this is exciting. Where are we going with that? What are we talking about? You know, I feel like that. But at the same time, as a blanket term used to refer both vaguely and inclusively to almost everything that's not a dog or a cat, you know, that's not so good. So, and all right, I guess I better head out, but I really enjoyed it, and I am glad to see you all. Thank you, Richard. Smash that like button. That really does help everybody helps more people see our future live streams and other videos. So I love it. Thank you. And this week, I got a video coming out for you on Friday, as always. So check it out and have a good day. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks again. Until next time.